Welcome to my presentation about Irish customs on St. John's Eve, otherwise known as Bonfire Night. Similarly to how time is measured here in Canada, in Ireland the year is also measured in 4 seasons. The pre-Christian tradition of time in Ireland gives priority to night over day and to winter over summer. So the year starts in Samhain, meaning winter, then Imbolg, meaning spring, Bealtaine meaning summer, and lastly Lunasa, meaning autumn, or the time of the harvest festival. St. John's Eve, which I will be discussing in depth, occurs every year on June 23rd, the eve of St. John's feast day, which also coincides with the summer solstice. I also want to quickly comment on the image shown in the right. It's a photo of a sundial in Galway in May of 1956. This image, and many others that will be shown in this presentation, are from the image collection of Dúchas.ie. They have a whole collection of images from St. John's Eve in Ireland, and I'm excited to include these in the slides. The sun is a very important tool that has been used for thousands of years by people to make sense of our surroundings and our environment, and to help us understand the concept of time. The winter and summer solstice days have traditionally been very important time markers throughout the year in Ireland and across the globe. Celtic festivals have historically been centered around equinoxes and solstices, as well as worshipping the sun. St. John's Eve, being set during the summer solstice, can be seen as a surviving aspect of sun worship. There is a lot of visible evidence that can be seen even today of how important the sun has traditionally been for people in Ireland. Newgrange is an exceptional example of this. It's a tomb older than the pyramids, over 5,000 years old, that has a 60-foot passageway to the inside, and that has a light box that also stretches all the way inside the tomb. Once every year during the winter solstice, the light box lines up perfectly with the placement of the sun, and the tomb becomes illuminated. It's truly an extraordinary remnant of the past. Newgrange is cool, but we're really here to talk about the summer solstice in Ireland. It's a long tradition in Ireland and in many other places in the world to light a bonfire on the evening of the solstice in June. This has traditionally been done in honor of the triumph of sunshine and vegetation. Over the years, the tradition has been changed and shaped by things like the introduction of Christianity into Ireland, and the bonfires that are burned today are not quite the same as what they used to be. It is speculated that during the summer solstice bonfires from its early days included rituals that involved encasing people in wicker baskets and then offering them as sacrifices to the fire. It is for certain that such human sacrifices were made by the Celts more generally, but it is difficult to verify whether or not this was also true for the Celts in Ireland. The name for bonfire in Irish literally means fire of bones. Nowadays, it is common for bones to be thrown into the fire. Some families will put animal bones aside throughout the year to save for use on St. John's Eve. So you might be wondering, when did this summer solstice tradition become known as St. John's Eve? The summer solstice bonfires were already being practiced long before the arrival of Christianity in Ireland, making it a traditionally pagan celebration. But in the 5th century, when St. Patrick arrived in Ireland, many pagan celebrations had to be altered to fit within the new religion. St. John's feast day, the 24th of June, marks the birth of St. John, and coincidentally aligns with the summer solstice, and so Bonfire Night became St. John's Eve, on June 23rd of every summer. While acting as a marker of time every summer, the bonfires also serve many other functions. One of the most common functions is to protect people and their families from bad fortune, and to protect their crops and cattle. To bless the crops, it is common for people who attend the bonfire to take home with them some ashes to spread across their fields, or to take home a coal for the home to bring good luck and protection for the rest of the year. Sometimes people bring a lit torch from the fire to their field to bless the crops with the smoke, while others might shake holy water onto their fields. There is one source that describes families who, before leaving the fire, walk around it 7 times while saying prayers, and then each takes a coal out of the fire and throws it in their crops for good fortune. Another function of the fire that is derived from the Christianization of the evening is to spend time honoring St. John Baptist. Some will say prayers around the fire or to the fire for St. John. Other prayers are given for fine weather and good crops, and sometimes the rosary will be said around the fire. These fires can also be major social occasions, as sometimes there is one big fire for an entire village, and everyone gathers together for it. To elaborate on how the fire protects people against fairies, it is said that midsummer is a time when people should be especially cautious about fairies. This is not unique to Ireland, and can also be seen exemplified in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. For protection, one source says that coals from the fire are sometimes sewn into the clothes of the women, to hold them to the ground and to keep them from being carried away by the fairies. It is also common for people to bring their cattle close to the fire, and to protect them against fairy spells, such as enchanted hares milking them or being carried off by the fairies. Some say that people drive their cattle near or through the smoke or the flames. Others say that furze bushes or sticks are lit by the fire and are then thrown at the cows to singe their hair. Other accounts describe the cattle simply walking across the ashes after the fire has gone out. As mentioned in the slide prior, it is also common for families to bring home a piece of the fire after it has gone out, to protect the home from fairies and from the supernatural. One of the crops where the ashes are sure to be spread after the fire is the potato crop. Sometimes fires are lit in the potato garden of a particular home, and they are placed in accordance with the wind to ensure the smoke travels over the garden. This is supposed to protect the potatoes from disease and from blight. It makes you wonder if extra precautions were always taken to protect the potato crops, or if this has become more of a tradition since the potato blight of the famine. There are also some accounts of young boys starting their own bonfires and raiding nearby potato fields, stealing the early potatoes as it is not yet harvest time, and then roasting them over the fire, leaving the farmers annoyed. There are also other accounts of early potatoes being dug up by families or by communities and then boiling them over the fire. Some say that they are boiled in river water, and then enjoyed by everyone. There is a lot of variation in where the fires are located and how that location is chosen. Some of the fires are communal, for a whole village, while others are lit just for a family. The communal fires are located normally at the most elevated point so that it can be seen as visible as possible. This sometimes means being placed on the top of a hill or a rock. The location can vary from year to year, but many are burned in the same location every year. The direction of the wind is always taken into account to avoid burning down homes or hay racks, which would be quite devastating. Some accounts say that the bonfires were round in shape, while others are built more in the form of a pyramid or a cone. In Tralee, in the early 19th century, there are accounts of every street having its own bonfire, and of rivalries forming between streets to see who could build the biggest fire. There are also many accounts that describe the fires to be located in a heap at a crossroads. This can be seen in the image here on the left. There is one source that says that at a point in time in Dublin, when the bonfires could not be kindled, for a reason that I haven't been able to find, it was customary to set up a bush in the middle of the street and adorn it with lighted candles instead. Some sources do describe roles that are assigned to people based on their gender or their age. Many sources say that it is the young boys who work hard gathering material to burn in the fire, starting a week prior and storing the material somewhere dry. Other sources say it is both boys and girls who complete this task. Sometimes the children will go around to their neighbors asking for donations of material to burn, and most people will oblige. It is usually a boy or a man who lights the fire, or it is the oldest person in attendance. Sometimes the person who lights the fire is simply decided based on whose home is the closest, so a torch can be fetched from the fire in their home. There are specific games that are played by men and by women around the fire. It is said that the man who jumps over the biggest or the brightest flames earns protection and power over the fairy world. It is also said that the woman who jumps 3 times across the flames without touching them will soon marry. Children around the fire usually play and dance, while the older members sit and tell stories to each other, or to the children. I've read a lot of different accounts of what is generally used in the fire as fuel. The most common materials are turf, bones, coal, sticks, furze bushes, but can also include bogdeal roots, hay, rags, shoes, tires, and tar. The furze bushes look like this yellow bush up in the left corner, and I suspect you can also see them in the bottom right image, only they are dead. And the bogdeal roots are shown in the image on the top right. The bottom left image shows children who are bringing tires over to the fire. These are some other images that I wanted to add to show how in more recent times, almost any material can be added to the fire. The picture on the right shows children getting ready to burn a big buoy, along with tires and other materials. It was taken in 2001 in County Mayo. As with everything else, there is a lot of variation to be found for what time the fire is to be started. The general consensus is that the fire will be lit in the evening after dinner or after all the daily tasks are completed. Some say 8 o'clock, others say nightfall or dusk, or 1 hour before sunset or at sunset, but these are all really variations of the same thing. The bonfires are described as quite the occasion, with lots of singing and dancing, sometimes until the morning. The instruments that people can bring include, but are not limited to, the fiddle, violin, bagpipes, melodeon, bugle, or the flute. Some people will jump over the fire, children will play with each other, and some accounts describe people dancing in a ring around the fire. Games are played and adults visit with one another. Sometimes the children are told stories, or they're given sweets to eat. The information that I was able to find about the suppression of these bonfires is very intriguing, because there has been suppression by the Catholic Church But there are also accounts of suppression initiated by Orangemen against Catholics. There is a publishing in the Kerry Evening Post from 1868 that describes how St. John's Eve was historically a big amusement for the town of Tralee, where every street would build a fire, and even the elite of the town would walk about and admire the bonfires. The article states, "The dying embers of these grand fires was in 1849, as there has not been a large fire since in Tralee. The church commented their crusade against them, and spoke them down from the altar." It is interesting why the Catholic Church would target the bonfires that were still held in honor of St. John Baptist. Fires still continued to burn in Tralee, but the source describes how it was never like how they used to be celebrated. In the early 19th century, at around the same time that this was happening in Tralee, there were attacks on some fires by Orangemen in the north of Ireland. There was a midsummer bonfire in Armagh in 1830 that was attended by both Protestants and Catholics. They were attacked by a party of Orangemen, some being stabbed and one who later died from the incident. 4 of the Orangemen were arrested, and 2 were sentenced on the charge of riot and assault. 4 years later, in the neighbouring county of Monaghan, the police and some locals had a difference of opinion on a midsummer bonfire that was being held. This altercation resulted in one man being shot to his death. One possible reason for these attacks is that some people saw the purpose of the bonfires as a metaphorical burning of Protestant bones. While many of these customs date back centuries, some even much longer than that, many are still alive today. St. John's Eve is still celebrated with bonfires in Ireland as well as throughout the world, even sometimes here in Quebec, although to a lesser extent. It may not have kept with its original meaning of sun worship and sacrifice, but it still nonetheless marks an important time in the year, and has shifted and transformed to include the honoring of St. John Baptist. It is incredible to see how folk customs are changed and preserved over time, and how a tradition can stand the test of time. It is members of the folk who commence this tradition, and it is members of the folk who ensure that it lives on.